Welcome to the Animal Welfare Education Seminar Series. This is the first of a series of seminars that GRV's Animal Welfare Department intends to run to inform participants of any new rules, policies or requirements. From October 1st, 2017, Local Rule 42.6 will be amended to improve rehoming of greyhounds and reduce unnecessary euthanasia. The first part of the new rule requires owners to give their greyhound a minimum of 28 days wind down from racing related activities and undertake genuine daily efforts to socialise the greyhound to non-training, non-racing settings and environments. This rule applies to all Victorian owners, regardless of where the greyhound is located or where euthanasia occurs. The wind down period should help you understand the type of pet home your greyhound may be suitable for. It also provides you with time to begin undertaking rehoming attempts. More information is available in GRV's Racing to Retirement Guide. It should be noted, however, the greyhound must not engage in any racing related activity during the wind down period. A greyhound can be rehomed at any time during this period, and that failure to comply with the wind down is a serious offence. The second part of the rule requires owners to undertake specific minimum rehoming attempts to avoid euthanasia. These include seeking to rehome the greyhound with at least 2 suitable third parties, seeking the greyhound's admission to the greyhound adoption program, and seeking to rehome the greyhound through at least one other animal adoption, rehoming or rescue agency. These rehoming attempts can be made in any order. However, detailed records of the rehoming efforts must be kept and provided if requested. A checklist is available to help follow this process and record your rehoming attempts. Once a greyhound is successfully rehomed, you are not required to pursue any other options. The final part of this rule is the notice of intention to euthanise. Where all attempts at rehoming are unsuccessful and a decision to euthanise is made, owners must submit a notice of intention to euthanise via fast track at least 14 days before carrying out the euthanasia. The notice of intention to euthanise on fast track requires the owner to certify that they have undertaken the wind down period and made all the required attempts to rehome their greyhound. The wind down activities must continue throughout the notice of intention to euthanise period, and failure to submit a notice of intention to euthanise and comply with the mandatory 14-day waiting period is a serious offence. If, after submitting the notice of intention to euthanise, the owner wants to trial or race the greyhound, then the notice of intention to euthanise must be cancelled before commencing training or racing. When you are ready to retire your greyhound again, you will need to commence the retirement process from the beginning. There are some exemptions to parts of this new rule. If the greyhound is aggressive towards people and or other animals, it may indicate that it is not suitable for rehoming for behavioural reasons. If this is the case and you are considering euthanasia, Local Rule 42.6 requires you to undertake the 28-day wind-down period to obtain written certification from a veterinarian or GRV approved person to indicate that the greyhound displays behaviours that make it unsafe to rehome into the community, and finally you must also submit a notice of intention to euthanise at least 14 days before the euthanasia is carried out. Owners of greyhounds with certification stating that they display behaviours that make them unsafe to rehome into the community are not required to undertake rehoming attempts. In addition, if a registered veterinarian certifies that the greyhound is suffering a serious medical condition, that it would be inhumane or would compromise the welfare of the greyhound to delay euthanasia, there is no requirement to undertake the wind down period, rehoming efforts, or the notice of intention to euthanise. Similarly, if the greyhound is legally required to be euthanised, for example under a council destruction order or a court order, there is no requirement to the wind down period, rehoming efforts, or notice of intention to euthanise. However, the owner of a greyhound must provide GRV written certification by a veterinarian or a copy of the legal destruction order with a copy of the euthanasia certificate. A notice of intention to euthanise is required to be individually submitted for each greyhound you intend to euthanise. The only exception to this requirement, as mentioned earlier, are when a registered veterinarian certifies that the greyhound is suffering a serious medical condition such that it is inhumane or would compromise the welfare of the greyhound to delay euthanasia, or the greyhound is legally required to be euthanized. The Notice of Intention to Euthanize form is available under the My Dogs tab on Fast Track. The form requires owners to declare that they have undertaken all the requirements of the rule or have a behavioural certificate to indicate that their greyhound is unsuitable for rehoming. Please note that a Notice of Intention to Euthanize submitted with a behavioural certificate may take up to 72 hours to be processed before being accepted. The submission of a Notice of Intention to Euthanize does not require that the greyhound must be euthanized, if a suitable home can be found. It is important to note that you cannot euthanize your greyhound during the 14-day notice period. During this time, you should continue to seek suitable rehoming opportunities, and euthanasia must be the very last resort. So what is considered a reasonable rehoming effort? The assessment of rehoming efforts will be on a case-by-case basis, considering the participant's individual circumstances. At the very least, there must be genuine efforts, and keep proof of the actions undertaken to try and rehome their greyhound. An example of an unreasonable effort is a repeated unsuccessful rehoming attempt to the same family member or friend. This diagram shows the reasonable efforts you must attempt to rehome your greyhound. As stated earlier, these attempts can be made in any order, and if you rehome your greyhound in your first attempt with any of the places or people shown, then you have successfully rehomed your greyhound. But what type of evidence is required to show a reasonable effort? Names and contact details for people who have been contacted as part of rehoming efforts, as well as dates and outcomes, will be required to be submitted on request by GRV. GRV has produced a checklist to help owners manage their responsibilities under the rule and record rehoming attempts. You can pick one of those up today. Please note, failure to make reasonable efforts under Local Rule 42.6 is a serious offence. From early 2018, GRV will likely give priority spaces at pre-entry assessment sessions to greyhounds that are desexed and have completed the 28-day wind-down period. These greyhounds will be offered a reserved space in a pre-entry assessment session as soon as one becomes available, usually within 2 to 4 weeks. Now, while desexing can be expensive, some veterinary clinics will offer desexing at a lower cost. In some cases, desexing will be cheaper than the cost of keeping and feeding your greyhound for several months while on the pre-assessment entry list. This is the retirement process checklist, which has been developed to help participants. It outlines the process required to satisfy the new rule. I'll now provide you with a short video on how to navigate Fast Track to submit or cancel a Notice of Intention to Euthanize. Good afternoon. The following video tutorial will outline the process for lodging a Notice of Intention to Euthanize in Fast Track. The first step is to log into a Fast Track homepage and navigate to the My Dogs page. Each greyhound in the My Dogs page has an Actions tab. However, the Notice of Intention to Euthanize link will only be available for dogs that you own. Clicking this link directs us to the Notice of Intention to Euthanize declaration page, which you can see is divided into 3 main parts, A, B and C. For Part A, the owner needs to read and confirm the declarations and check the tick boxes at the end before moving on to Part B. Part B is split into 2 main options, namely options A and B. Option A addresses scenarios where all the rehoming efforts have been unsuccessfully attempted. If this is the case, we would confirm yes and move on to Part C. Option B, however, addresses cases where the owner is exempt from making rehoming efforts on behavioural grounds. If this is the case, the owner must upload the certified proof using the link provided here. A Upon choosing a link, we can upload the document, check the confirmation box and move on to Part C. Finally, similarly to Part A, Part C requires the owner to read the final 4 points declaration, confirm and tick the confirmation boxes at the end and hit submit. We can confirm and submit the NOI, and once submitted, the notice of intention to euthanize details will be emailed to the owner, and a summary can be found in the dog's history tab. Please note that nominations cannot be accepted while a notice of intention to euthanize has been placed against the dog. However, the notice of intention to euthanize can be cancelled at any time by clicking the Actions menu for the dog and clicking Cancel. Alternatively, a cancel link can also be found here. That summarises the notice of intention to euthanize process. Thank you very much for your time, and we welcome any questions.